Okay, so tonight I'm going to do Parashat Bereshit. After all, the next coming few weeks are going to be holidays, so we won't have time to cover it. So this is a good time to learn a little bit about a very important parasha. It's the first parasha of the Torah. It discusses creation of the world, the creation of man. A lot of valuable lessons to learn in this parasha. What's interesting in the very beginning, what is noticeable, is that after Hashem creates the world, a world which has so much detail, some of which is described to us, right after it, there's already a commandment, there's already an instruction to the human being, that is. And what is the instruction? Listen, you have a lot of things around you that you're going to like, that you're going to notice, that you're perhaps going to want for yourself. Enjoy it, use it, but don't get close to the Etz HaDa'at. To one tree, don't get close. Don't eat from it. Etz HaDa'at, the tree of knowledge. So it's interesting that right in the very, very beginning, he receives instructions which limit him to what he can do and not do. What is the purpose of giving man instructions right away? Restrictions. From the very beginning of creation, what is noticeable is that Hashem created sets. And these sets define certain differences that exist. Not only differences, but pretty much opposites. You have, for example, light and darkness, day and night. These are time frames. The day is limited to a certain amount of time, the night is limited to a certain time frame. Then you have male and female. You have the physical body and you have the soul. Very different entities. And you also have Kodesh V'chol. You have that which is holy and that which is unholy. So what we're seeing from the very beginning is that Hashem created opposites or sets where the two are very different from each other. And this creates certain limitations, certain limits. What does this teach us? That man must realize that he also has limits. He needs to have these limits. In order to succeed in life, the fact that he is different from an animal, he's been given a certain level of intelligence where he can differentiate, where he can observe the differences that exist and know what his limits are. Man was created for a totally different purpose. He's not an animal. He therefore has to live his life by following certain rules. If he breaks those rules, if he doesn't see differences, if he thinks everything is the same, then he will not succeed. Man therefore needs to have certain rules, certain limitations as to what he can do and what he cannot do. An animal doesn't need such rules. A human being is endowed with free will, so he is able to do the right thing or the wrong thing. So he has to be instructed, therefore, from the very beginning, listen, you have tremendous powers. Therefore, be careful and know what your limits are. Especially since the greatest obstacle to man, the greatest weakness that he will have, will be in the area of ta'avot. Ta'avot are desires. All kinds of desires that people have. You see from the very beginning of Parashat Bereshit the whole story with the serpent. And what happens there basically? They are tempted by the serpent to eat from that tree that they were told not to eat. So that pitui, that temptation, is a form of ta'ava. Let's try it out. What could be so bad about it? What's going to happen? Are we really going to die? So I guess people are curious too. Not only do they have ta'avot desires, but they're curious. And why can't they eat from that tree? That the Torah doesn't really tell us. But the commentaries explain that at that time, that knowledge, the Etz HaDa'at, would have not have been a good idea for man to possess. It would hurt him. We're talking about a stage in creation where human beings have a tremendous amount of ta'avot, tremendous amount of desires, and the Torah is not yet given. There are no set rules on how man needs to control his life. So that incredible knowledge, divine knowledge, for man to possess that at that time would hurt him much more than it would help him. Hashem says, therefore, don't touch it. This is not good for you right now. Trust me. However, right after man is created, the Torah describes Shabbat. Shabbat, the seventh day, is a holy day. What's the purpose of having a holy day? For the Jew especially, later on, it's very important that we receive the Shabbat. Shabbat introduces a certain level of holiness that we don't have during the week. The physical week, the days when we are immersed in work, is a very, very different kind of experience than Shabbat. Shabbat is intended to enable us to immerse in that Kedusha, in that holiness. And once one connects to that holiness, the holiness provides him with a certain busha of Kedusha, a certain shame that he would have coming from Kedusha. Shame, there's different kinds of shame. The shame coming or derived from holiness is a positive shame. It makes one aware of Hashem and wants or generates a desire for one to come closer to Hashem. As a result of that shame that he has, that's coming from a holy source, he feels that he wants to connect. So that Shabbat, by introducing that Kedusha into the world, enables the Jew to connect in a very powerful way to Hashem, much more than he can do so during the week. So Shabbat is necessary. Shabbat is something very, very important, especially for the neshama. What would happen without the Kedusha, without that holiness? Then the da'at that he had acquired, that knowledge, would produce a shame too, but a shame that's derived from his animal instinct. And what happened after they ate from the fruit? All of a sudden they noticed that they were naked. All of a sudden they noticed their nakedness. What does that mean, their nakedness? Their animal, the animal part of themselves. Before that, they were totally unaware of that. Man knew that he was special, that he's different, that he realized that he has the ability to choose between right and wrong. He notices certain things. But right after he ate from that fruit, that forbidden fruit, he gains a certain knowledge, but this is a knowledge at a time where he's full of ta'avot, of desire, no kedusha. That knowledge produced a shame of his nakedness. People usually don't like to be seen naked. It reminds them of the animal part of them. See what I mean? That's why most people cover themselves up. Why? Because they don't want to expose that part of them that reminds them of the animal. Because that area, the physical body, not the soul, is very similar to an animal. It eats, drinks, reproduces, goes to the bathroom. Nobody likes that part so much. So the shame that they had immediately from eating from the tree of knowledge is a shame of behemiyut, of the animal part of them, not a good shame. Even though obviously it's good that we have that shame, because a lot of people don't even have that shame and they just go around naked. But the real shame that one should have is derived from Kedusha. So here, since man is immersed in the world of ta'avot, of desires, that knowledge would have hurt him. It wouldn't have really helped him in any way. At this point in time, therefore, we can say that man is not mature enough for this da'at. He's not ready for it yet. There's no Torah yet, because what would the Torah do for him? The Torah would help him with those ta'avot. It would help him channel those desires, that negative energy that he has, properly. So here, without Torah, he's like a wild animal. He's being controlled by his ta'avot, by his desires. So he's not mature enough yet to use all that da'at, that knowledge, in a positive way. How does the Torah give us guidance? How does the Torah enable us to deal properly with the ta'avot? The Torah teaches us the importance of Kedusha. Very simple. Besides all the mitzvot, besides all the laws, the Torah emphasizes what holiness is, what spirituality is. So when one learns Torah, he realizes, wow, there's another dimension out there. There's a world that I was totally unaware of, that I cannot just see with my physical eyes. I need to experience it. And once, of course, you experience it, you notice that there is something out there that is spiritual. It's a lot more beautiful than the physical world. So the Torah introduces us to Kedusha, and it's through that Kedusha that one is able to gain control over his tavot. Otherwise, as I've said many times, without Torah, without a clear direction from Hashem, why would somebody want to control his appetites? Just let them loose. Enjoy a good meal. Eat as much as you want. Of course, eat healthy foods. Nobody wants to get sick. But there's no reason to control himself. Unless it's the law of the land. That's a different story. But without laws, without any laws, why should somebody control his tavot? It's instinct. The body wants these things, enjoys these things. So it's only when we get the Torah that we realize, wait a minute, too much of this is no good either. We need to have a little bit of it to survive. We need to reproduce. Obviously, Hashem wants us to have what He gave us, but to use it properly, not to exaggerate the use of it. So we need the Torah to remind us about the importance of being holy, being more spiritual, and not being tied down to all the tavot, to all the desires. An example of how the desires destroyed mankind is in the beginning of the Torah as well. We see the story of Dora Mabul, the generation of the flood, later on Sodom V'Amorah. You see many examples of how the ta'avot, the desires that man had back then, destroyed them. It ruined them. It didn't really help them in any way. They were basically misled by it, thinking that that's all there is, so that's what's more important. So, without Kedusha, what would happen to society is it would go berserk, as they say in English. It would simply follow their evil inclination. So even though mankind was not mature yet, back then, to eat from the Eitz Hadat, to have all this knowledge, the Zohar does say something incredible. Now remember, the Zohar was written about 1600 years ago or more. And already it says that in the year 1840, what is that? Almost 180 years ago, the gates of wisdom will open up. The Zohar is telling us that in this year, in the year 5600, according to the Jewish calendar, which corresponds to the year 1840, the gates of wisdom will open up. Wow. Now, what that means is that there will be a lot of advances in technology, in the medicine field, in the medical field. In various areas, there will be tremendous advances as a result of all the gates of wisdom, of knowledge, will open up. And you see it. In 1940, approximately around that time, that's when the Industrial Revolution started. And that's when you see tremendous leaps in technology, in medicine, everywhere. Electricity. And once that took off, year after year, things evolved in a way that the world never saw before. The world did not change for many, many years, very, very little bit. You had the printing press. That was a major invention. You had eyeglasses. You had gunpowder. Things that little by little were invented, discovered. But the major changes that the world is seeing today is from that point on, that the Zohar says the gates of knowledge, the gates of wisdom will open up. So why is it happening now? Apparently, we're getting closer to the end. Hashem felt that this is a time where humanity will be able to have some use for it. As we're getting close to the end, Mashiach is about to come. The world is about to come to its tachlit, to its completion. So at this time, this knowledge will serve some purpose. But even now, without proper direction, this knowledge can be dangerous. Nuclear bombs is the best example. Human beings have the ability to destroy themselves today in a way that was not possible in the past as a result of this knowledge. So you see, even now, that this knowledge is being put to good use, but it's also very, very dangerous. Besides the tree of knowledge that is discussed in Bereshit, there's also something that is discussed more in the Zohar and the Kabbalah that is alluded to in the Torah. There's a concept of light, which is not the light of day, another type of light that the Kabbalah calls the Or HaGanuz, the light that Hashem put away for the end of days. It was a very, very special spiritual light that enabled man to know a lot of things on a very, very high level. This is not just plain scientific knowledge. This is something much more special, more spiritual in nature. It's called the Or HaGanuz, the light that was set aside or put away for the righteous in the end of days. During that time, that light will be revealed, and those who will merit will be able to know a lot of things on a very, very deep level. So we see that right now, that Or HaGanuz would not be compatible. That Or HaGanuz, that special light, would not be compatible with human beings because the human beings are more physical. It makes more sense that this light will be revealed to human beings who are more spiritual. When will that be? When Mashiach comes. The physical bodies will be more spiritual, will be more refined. That is the time to reveal to them this Or HaGanuz in the end of days. If you look at creation, once you go through the Torah and you go through history, you will notice, as the rabbis tell us, that there are 3 stages. We have 6,000 years total. We have the first 2,000 years of tohu, of confusion, or of formation, of creation, where things are just developing. Nothing major happens during the first 2,000 years. But then you have the next 2,000 years. Those are the 2,000 years of Torah, and later of religion, including Christianity and Islam, where human beings become educated in what it is to serve God. And then you have the last 2,000 years, which are called Yemot HaMashiach, the time of Mashiach. Mashiach can come any time during those years. Things that will emerge on the world scene that will have some connection to Mashiach. Major wars, conflicts, natural phenomena of all sorts that will be basically preparing the world for the end of days. So that's how the rabbis divide up the 6,000 years in these 3 stages. So these are the stages of the world. But in the same way that the world goes through stages in its formation, becoming more and more mature, you can say, the same happens with the human being himself. Look at the very beginning. Human beings were living for a long time. Methuselah, remember? 969 years. Social Security would go broke. What would they do with all that time? This was not a very, very constructive time. Why did Hashem give them so many years? It's very difficult to understand Hashem's ways. We don't know why so many years. But this is a different time frame. This is a different time frame in the development of man. That he was given all this time, and we can learn from this that without direction, without Torah, look what he did with all that time. He wasted it on things that are not so important. He was immersed the whole day in his tavot, in his pursuit of desires. We can see that. So if we had all that time, would we do any better? Not necessarily. We're told life is short. Therefore, do as much as you can in this little time that you have. Because even if you had more time, you would not necessarily accomplish a lot more. The little bit that you have is all you need to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Having more would not necessarily be any better. But after that stage in the human formation, you have idol worshiping, or you have human beings turning to religion, real religion, as I said before. You're having a stage where human beings are becoming more and more mature and choosing to emphasize different things. There's still tavot, there's still desires, there's still trouble, but at least people are beginning to have more faith in God, forming some sort of beliefs. And this is all over the world, including in Iran with Zoroaster, the Chinese, with their beliefs, it's pretty much common to many, many cultures that they are beginning to develop certain beliefs about life in general. You can also see that in the very beginning there were certain animals that existed that do not exist today. And I speak about that in a lecture about dinosaurs. We know they existed. There's a question as to when exactly did they exist. But assuming that they were there from the very beginning of creation and they disappeared sometime around the flood, the question is, why only till then? Why not more? Why don't we still have them today? Why did they become extinct? Everybody agrees they became extinct. There's only a little bit of a discussion as to how they became extinct. But not too many scientists discuss the why behind something. They don't have the answer to the why. They're just busy trying to figure out how. How did this happen, that they became extinct? But the explanation for why they became extinct is very simple. Hashem says they're going to be around for only a certain amount of years, only during that stage of creation, not later on. It would interfere. Imagine if you had dinosaurs on Pico Boulevard. I mean, it's not possible. As it is, sometimes human beings, because they continuously develop homes in the forests and the mountains, they run into wild animals because they're going into their territory. There's more attacks as a result. Human beings were not meant to coexist next door to the animals. That's why animals hunt at night when human beings are asleep. Hashem set limits, as we said before, a different time for the animals to do whatever they need to do and for human beings to go to work and do whatever they need to do, and gave them different parts of the world. Otherwise the wild animals would be a problem. So they existed for a certain amount of time that Hashem decided, until when it will be. Again, we see examples of how the world changed, not only in the atmosphere, as we're told. Even the atmosphere changed. It was different before the Mabul and after the Mabul. We see the continents breaking up according to our tradition. It was one land mass before, and now we have various continents. Why? Why did Hashem want it to be this way? All we have is a little bit of a clue from what the Torah says, that after the flood, they scattered. After the Dora Palaga, to be more exact, the generation that built the tower in Babel, Hashem scattered them all over the world and mixed up their languages. So we do have a little bit of a reference of how it happened, when it happened, that people began to disperse all over the world. But before that, they were much closer to each other and they spoke only one language. So in the same way that the world is leading to its completion, to its perfection, you might say, we learn from that man needs to also perfect himself. He's not just born in a certain way, grows physically and stays the way he is. He has a job, and that is to perfect himself, to refine his character, because the physical body, if you feed it properly, it will grow by itself. But the spiritual part of the human being, for the neshama to grow, for the individual to mature, he obviously needs to do something other than just eat. So that is something that is left for man to do. Hashem says, I will create you, I will bring you into this world, and I will provide for you what you need to survive, but you take care of yourself, as far as refining yourself, as far as completing yourself. Where do we see that? In the very beginning, if you will notice, when Hashem describes what He made, what He created, there is a word kitov after every one of them. Hashem saw how everything was good, and it was day 1, day 2, day 3, right? What does it mean that He saw it was good? Good is something relative. What is good for me may not be good for you. When Hashem says something is good, it means it serves the ultimate purpose of creation. It has a purpose. There's a need for it, and it's complete. You don't have to do anything more to it. Hashem created the world, the sun, the stars, everything is complete, everything is ready for the world. On man it doesn't say kitov. Man is good, isn't he? No, not necessarily. It will be up to him whether he will be good or not, how he behaves. Whether he earns himself a good name or not, whether he does good deeds or not, that will be up to him. So Hashem says, whether you're going to be tov or not will depend on you. And only on the day man dies will we know whether he was good or not. Not when he's a baby, when they're all cute. Only when they die do we know what did he do with himself. Did he do anything, or did he just waste his time? So man needs to do something about refining himself. Who's going to help him? Well, one of his helpers will be his wife, one spouse. The Torah says clearly, "Eselo ezer kenegdo." I will make for him a helpmate, ezer, and that will be his soulmate. As long as it's the real soulmate, then the chances are very good that one will help each other. Now, it says ezer kenegdo, which is very interesting. In Hebrew, that means a help opposite him. And the rabbis learn from this that when it says opposite, it means that she can oppose him too. This helper can actually oppose him, be against him. It all depends if he's meritorious or not. If he's a good person, she will be his helper. If he's not, she's going to give him a lot of trouble. She will oppose him. Not everyone, of course, but there's a chance that Hashem will use the woman to oppose the man. When they say opposites attract, by the way, it doesn't really mean complete opposites because they wouldn't get along. It's opposites that need each other, that are compatible, and feel that they can really get along because each one has what the other one needs. So if they need each other, that's a good sign. So the soulmate is one way one can get the help he needs to perfect himself. Now, the Torah, of course, for the Jew, is also a tremendous, valuable guide because it gives the Jew direction, like a GPS, and reminds him of the tachlit, that life is purposeful, that you need to observe the mitzvot, you need to do certain things. This is not just a picnic. So the Jew has at least a map, a road map that guides him towards the tachlit. And what is that tachlit? What does the Torah teach is the tachlit of life, the purpose of life? Other than serving God, which is obvious by following His commandments, it's to do good, to be kind to other human beings. Olam chesed yibaneh. The world is founded through kindness. Founded meaning that this is the way the world functions. If there's no chesed, then everything destroys itself. We have war and conflict. People don't care about each other. They don't want to cooperate with each other. You're going to have war and destruction. So the Torah emphasizes chesed, meaning be considerate and sensitive of another human being. But if you look at history, what happened? Exact opposite. Humanity stumbled in this area, exactly this area, because each one cared more about themselves, about their own empire, about their own people. They went to war. They didn't care about the fate of others. They were sadistic even towards others. Terrible things against other civilizations. Continuously till this very day. It's incredible. You would think that by now human beings have become more mature, more intelligent. They have a long history to look back and see for themselves that it was not a good idea. They even made a United Nations to put an end to all those wars. It doesn't help. The United Nations doesn't get involved. It's a total waste of money and time. Nothing important goes on there. Maybe they do certain things that have some value. I'm not discounting it completely, but the real intent of forming that body of nations was to really cooperate, to do something together and hopefully eliminate war. That hasn't happened yet. So man has failed continuously as a result of the tavot that we said before, desires. So even though, if you analyze what the Torah says about man, that he's created in the image of God, that means he is special. Nonetheless, he's half animal. We can't forget that. He has certain character flaws. We all have our weaknesses. So it's true that we have a soul, and that makes us very unique and special, but let's not forget that we have those weaknesses. So what has happened throughout history is people have forgotten to follow their soul and instead follow their stomach, their appetite, their tavot, their desires, and did not make enough of an effort to control those character flaws. So therefore, we all, I think, are going to agree that there is a need for the 7 Noahide laws. Because here I was talking about Torah, but the Torah was given to the Jewish people. It's intended for a different mission. But what about the rest of the world? Don't they need some sort of rules, some laws? Yes, those are the 7 Noahide laws. Without them, you have chaos, you have anarchy. Thank God that in some countries you do have laws. You still have a lot of crime, you still have trouble, but there's some laws. Human beings need laws. Just like on the freeway, you have to have dividing lanes. You have to know, where the white paint or the yellow paint is, because otherwise there would be more accidents. People have to be shown what to do and what not to do. Otherwise, there would be chaos. As it is, there's a lot of chaos, but it would be a lot worse if there weren't any rules. The Jew, however, was given the Shabbat. Besides the Torah, he was also given the Shabbat, and it is through the Shabbat that he is able to connect and to remind himself of the Tachlit. We were talking a little bit about helpers, so I mentioned the soulmate. The Torah is obviously a big help, no question about it, but the Shabbat in itself is very significant because once a week, whether he's been learning Torah or not, he is reconnected in a very powerful way to remember the Tachlit, the purpose of life. How? What does Shabbat have to do with the Tachlit? Shabbat is the 7th day. The number 7 is very important in Judaism. It represents holiness. But here it's not just about the holiness, which we already discussed before, what that does for us. It's about the number 7 representing the world to come. The world to come is the Tachlit. This is just a passageway we're going through for 70, 75, 80 years, or a little bit more, and then we leave, right? We're done with what we have to do in this world. Everything that is being done here is in preparation for the world to come, for the spiritual afterlife, and for the world to come after Mashiach comes. It's both, the spiritual afterlife when we leave this world, the physical world, plus the world that is awaiting us after Mashiach comes, after Techiyat HaMetim, after the dead will rise. So Shabbat reminds us of that. Shabbat is the Tachlit, it's the 7th day. The holiness of Shabbat is powerful too, but it's also the reminder that we need on a constant basis as to our Tachlit. Otherwise, what are you doing? Just work. You want more work? Shabbat, you rest. What do you rest? What exactly rest? The physical body gets the rest so that the Neshama can express itself. A whole week it may not have been able to express itself. So we abstain from certain types of functions, not just work, certain types of functions that will enable us to focus more on the family, more on Hashem, right? More on things that are of spiritual nature, not just the physical world, which we had 6 days to think about. Enough. So this actually is a big help. People don't appreciate what Shabbat does for them. If you keep it properly, you will experience something very, very sublime. So the Shabbat, in the end, if it's observed properly, will remind us of how important the service of Hashem is. And the service, or I should say the work that we do that is physical related, is in no way as important as the service of Hashem. So on a regular day, of course, we have both. We have the prayer, we have the mitzvot that apply, but we also have our jobs. So we're obviously going to be focused on the two of them. Comes along Shabbat and reminds us, no, but this is the more important one, the service of Hashem. So I asked the question, if that's the case, that man needs to focus on the Tachlit, man needs to perfect himself, that ultimately what really matters is the afterlife or the Olam Haba, the world to come, not this world. Why is it that Hashem wanted man to work so hard? If you read Parasha Bereshit, at the very beginning, you will notice that it appears that God cursed man, that through the sweat of your brow you're going to have to eat. You're going to eat bread. Can I cannot just eat bread without sweating, without working hard? But you know what goes into making a loaf of bread, right? It's a lot of work. You don't see it because you buy it at the bakery. It's all ready. But from seeding the wheat in the field, preparing the ground, all the work that goes into the field, and then when it's all harvested, the threshing, the grinding, the making the dough, the baking, there's a lot of work, a lot of steps that go into making the bread. So all of this is hard labor. What for? So if you just read Bereshit, just basically translate the words that are there, you will think that this is just a curse. This is the way Hashem cursed, that we should work so hard, but it's not so. Even though it's not such a blessing that we have to work so hard, obviously it's difficult, but there's definitely a good reason of why Hashem wanted us to work hard. One reason is man should remind himself that he's dependent on him. If everything would come easy to him, would he pray? Do you think he would pray? It would be rain on time. Imagine everything is easy. The work is not that important because everything pretty much happens by itself. You pick the bread from the ground. You don't have to bake it, do anything. In some ways, that's the type of life they had before the flood. A very easy life comparison. And they sinned. They thought of themselves so highly. They're like gods. And that's what the serpent told Adam and Eve. You will be like a god. You will be independent. You will be all-knowing. And life will be better for you. That's how he convinced them. But it's not so. It ruined man in many, many ways. He was so much purer before the sin. So there was always this danger that man can become detached from the Creator, as has happened too, in all kinds of ways. Hashem says, I want you to work hard to realize that you depend on me, because man forgets. Another idea perhaps is when man is engaged in refining the work. In other words, cultivating the land and taking the crop and transforming it into a final product that is tasty and edible. What does that do for him? It also reminds him, wait a minute, look at all that work, all that accomplishment. Wow, I can do that. Look at this. This is great. It's tasty. It's good. If that's what I'm able to do in the physical world, by the way, including building big skyscrapers, if man says to himself, wow, if I can do all that, and basically refine the raw material and transform it into something so beautiful and so useful, then perhaps I can do that to myself too. Spiritually, refine myself and become a better person. Transform this animal in me into something more elevated. So it serves as a message too. You're capable. Look what you did. God has given you the brains to do this. You don't think He's given you the brains or the ability to make something of yourself, a better person? And for the Jew, that's what the circumcision is all about. It's a reminder that there's something that you have to remove. Why didn't God just not create us with that foreskin? Why did He give us an extra piece of skin that needs to be removed for boys at the 8th day? One explanation is to remind us, you see, you're not complete just yet. There's something that you need to do. God brought you into this world. He gave a soul to this human being. He gave him all the senses. He provides him with livelihood. Yeah, but there's something that you need to do. By removing the foreskin, the Jew is reminded that this is part of his mission in life, is to perfect himself. And where is this foreskin removed from? In the source of all ta'avot, of all the desires. That's the location, the source of all the ta'avot, of all the desires. So it's interesting how he's being reminded, You're not just perfecting yourself. You're perfecting yourself in an area which is very important, and that is the area of tavot, of desires. Because if you continue to be controlled by desires, you will not succeed. In order for the human being to succeed in life, he has to have control over those desires and not be controlled by the desires. So either you control your evil inclination, or your evil inclination will control you. There's nothing in between. Either you are the boss and you're in charge and control, and it's possible, or if you let him, he'll control you. And you see that all over the world. People who are addicted, people who are completely controlled by their desires, no limits whatsoever. There was an individual who came once to his rabbi seeking help. He says, "Rabbi, my evil inclination is always pursuing me. He's always after me. I don't know what to do to stop him. He's always going after me." So the rabbi says, no, that can't be so. You're not on that level yet that the evil inclination is pursuing you. You are still pursuing him. You're going after him. In other words, you're searching for ways to satisfy your desires. He's not coming after you. He doesn't have to. And that's the reality, that a lot of people are actually going after their evil inclination. What else can I eat? What else can I do? They're not on the defensive, they're on the offensive. They're actually going and looking for things that will bring them pleasure and enjoyment. Where the goal ultimately is that we're not driven by these things. We just do whatever we need, the bare minimum, but to be driven by it, to emphasize this, to care so much about this, no, that's not the way of a Torah type of life, which is guided more by spiritual priorities than physical ones. We also must remember that this is a battle for our entire life. From when a child begins to walk, talk, he already has some of that evil inclination in him developed, where he wants everything for himself. He's selfish. He needs to learn to be unselfish and to share, right? We always tell our children, share, learn to share. Now some kids are better than others, but children need to learn. And you think adults don't need to learn? Of course, we always need to learn. But the hope is that as a child progresses, as he grows, as he matures, that he on his own will know certain things. Obviously, without Torah, it's much more difficult. So the Torah helps in reminding us of the ultimate tachlit, of the ultimate purpose of life, what is right and what is wrong. And even then, it's confusing. It's not always clear. People are biased. People have issues. People are not so easy to give in. Those are those character flaws that we were talking about. Weaknesses that if one does not take action to perfect them, to refine them, then he will be a slave to his evil inclination. But what's the ultimate purpose of this battle? It's the way we are rewarded in the afterlife. Hashem says, I'm going to give you the free will. You're going to have battles with that evil inclination. It won't be easy. I'm telling you to observe my mitzvot, but you will have an enemy number one, that will give you a hard time. And the reason for this battle is because I want you to overcome it. That's your job. And that's how you will be rewarded. If I make it easy, then you don't have free will. Free will means I'm being challenged and I make the decision. And that's the decision that we need to take almost every day of our life, whether we do something right or something wrong. Every human being has those challenges, different kinds of challenges, but still challenges, where he has to make a decision. And that evil inclination, which is the physical body that is driving it, that's the motor of the evil inclination that uses the physical body and desires, will prompt him to do that which brings him physical pleasure. Whereas subconsciously the neshama, the soul, will direct him in a totally different direction. So it's a constant battle or conflict between the neshama, the soul, and the physical body. The yetzer hatov, the good inclination, and the evil inclination. One having the driver's seat in the soul, and one having the driver's seat in the physical body, which is full of tavot, full of desires. But in the end, this is how we are rewarded. So we said before that one of the helpers that Hashem gave us is a soulmate. The soulmate, however, sometimes opposes us, not only because the woman is different in nature than the man, not only because of that, but that is intended to be like that, that in order to create a certain balance, that man should not always think that he's right in what he does and what he says. He needs a counterweight. He needs something that will balance him out. As you know, women tend to be more emotional, more sensitive. Men tend to be more logical, even though men can be emotional too and sensitive. And women can be logical too. But usually they are very different. In these qualities, if they cooperate, help balance each other out. The Chafetz Chaim has a nice mashal. He says, think of that kind of an opposite as the wheels in a watch or in a clock. You have those wheels going in opposite directions, but that's what's necessary in order to produce movement. You need them to go in opposite directions. So the difficulties that we have with the Yetzer Hara, or the difficulties that one may have with his spouse, depending on the difficulties, some of these difficulties are actually helpful in order to bring about a certain balance in the human being's life. So we see all around that Hashem has given us the tools with which we can help ourselves. Not everyone appreciates the fact that the spouse can really be a big help. As the rabbis tell us, women have intuition, a more powerful intuition than the men. So depending on what exactly the discussion is about, what the subject is, sometimes you may want to listen to what your wife may have to say, because she may see something that you don't see. It's called intuition. So again, a help in a way that even though it is sometimes a struggle, it's difficult, but that struggle or that difficulty in the end helps put a certain balance in our life. What are the most challenging situations in the world? The most challenging situations in the world have always centered around kinat, ta'ava, and kavod. The pursuit of honor, jealousy, and desire. As the rabbis tell us, these three, I guess you can call them challenges or character flaws, makes no difference, have always been the source of all of the majority of problems in the world. These present the greatest challenges to human beings. Again, kinat, ta'ava, kavod, jealousy, desire, and the pursuit of honor. People are sometimes prepared to kill because of one of those three. And this never went away. Humanity still has those three things. Not just politicians, even family members. Sometimes family members, because of jealousy, they don't talk to each other. They can't get along. Because of da'ava, because of the desire, because of the money issues, inheritance and the like. That's all ta'ava. Or kavod. They want the respect. They want to be honored. It's also a problem for those who have this weakness. So it is these three that have brought about most of the misery, I think we can say, to the world, whether on a personal level or on a global scale. That many, many wars have been fought because of that. So these happen to be the most destructive qualities, most destructive midot. Kinat, ta'ava, kavod. So destructive that the rabbis tell us that these three, hakinah, ta'ava, kavod, motzi'im et ha'adam minam, they remove him from this world. Which world? Both. This physical world and the world to come. What that means is that they destroy a person's life. If he's so involved, or if he's so immersed in these, engrossed in this kind of qualities, then they will ruin his life. So they remove him from this physical world, means he may die young as a result of all the pressures, heart attacks, and the like. Depression, not having what he wants. They have the potential of removing him from this physical world as well as the world to come. Because of these three, he may commit some terrible sins. So when they say they have the ability to remove a person from this world, they mean both, from this physical world and from the world to come. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, as we've called him before, enemy number one, his main strategy, however, is not necessarily to cause man to sin. even though he does that, and he unfortunately succeeds in doing that. One of his more popular strategies is to distract man. Hesech hadat. By distracting man from his ultimate purpose, man does not accomplish what he's supposed to accomplish, and that's also bad in itself. Even if he doesn't get into trouble, to waste your time, to kill the time, but that's what the evil inclination does. He distracts him. Go take a long vacation, enjoy yourself. There's a lot to accomplish, especially for the Jew who has mitzvot, who has the learning of the Torah. He has to be very careful on how he spends his time, how he manages his time. And the evil inclination is very powerful in that respect, that he distracts us in the same way that we are told that the serpent did, through all kinds of traps, through all kinds of temptations. So that story with the Nachash in the very beginning of Bereshit is a very important story. It's not just about a little fairy tale like some people may think, that there was a serpent that began to talk. No, it's a very, very powerful message. Human beings, listen carefully. This will be your challenge for life. Until Mashiach comes, the evil inclination will be your foe. God has given you instructions and He wants you to be careful. He wants you to serve Him and do His will. And this guy will give you a hard time. He was hired by God, of course, created by God. But remember, you are capable of defeating him if you choose to. You have free will. But you're not going to be able to do that if you're unaware of him. You don't even know that he's going to ambush you. That's what he does. He ambushes people. And he distracts them. No sin, just a distraction. And all that time is being wasted. So in order for us not to be distracted as to what we really need to accomplish, the Torah gives us one important line that says a lot towards the end. The world is basically about to be destroyed through the flood, and Hashem says, "V'Noach matzachim bein Elokim." The Torah says that Noach stood out from his generation as finding favor in the eyes of God. Well, obviously the Torah is telling this to us to single him out and his family as the ones that are going to survive the flood. Hashem likes him, approves of his ways. He's not evil. He's a righteous man. But there's more to that. The Torah is reminding us, you see, by pointing this out about this individual called Noach, that he found favor in the eyes of God, this is what we need to focus on. Don't be distracted. If you remind yourself that this is what I need to do throughout my life, I need to find favor in his eyes. I need to find favor, of course, in the eyes of human beings as well. People should like me. People should respect me. No one should have to say, should have an unkind remark to say about us. Only good things. So obviously we have to make an effort in that area as well. But this will help us remind ourselves of the ultimate purpose. What am I here for? Not to serve myself, not to accumulate wealth, but to find favor in the eyes of Hashem. So anything that contributes towards that is permissible, acceptable, and definitely good. Anything that does not contribute to that, that will give us a bad name, that Hashem will not approve of, then obviously it's wrong. So here we're being distracted by the Yetzer Hara, but here we're being reminded, just focus on this idea, and you should stay out of trouble. To find favor in the eyes of Hashem, that should be the most important goal for you. Just to end, remember Amalek? Amalek is a very, very bitter foe of the Jewish people. He stands for the opposite of what we believe in. He doesn't believe in God. He wants us to cool off our interest in our service of Hashem. He's therefore an enemy that we have to be very careful with. The same way with the Yetzer Hara. The evil inclination is a very powerful foe. He works differently than Amalek because he does all kinds of things to distract us and to lure us to doing all kinds of things that are not necessarily completely wrong, but they are not helpful. If a person, for example, eats a lot, he's eating kosher. Is it wrong? It's not wrong, but if he eats a lot, it's not good. I'm not talking about physical health right now, I'm talking about spiritual health. He's going to become more physical and less spiritual as a result of that. So, in order to understand the danger of the evil inclination, the Torah presents the incident of the Nachash with a serpent. Why a serpent? Why not something else? Obviously, there's reasons for it, Kabbalistic reasons, what a serpent represents. But for us, it's enough if we think of a poisonous snake. Certain poisonous snakes can kill a person in 15 minutes. Their poison is so potent that if he doesn't get treatment right away, he's gone. There's different kinds of poisonous snakes, but some of them are very poisonous. So what does this remind us? Yes, the Yetzer Hara is a poisonous snake. It can really kill you. It can really destroy people's lives. If they argue about money, if they pursue money or materialism, and all they do a whole day is think about kin'ah, ta'ava, v'kavod, those three things that I mentioned before, jealousy, pursuit of honor, and desires. If that's what's going to be on their mind, that's going to be poison. That's what is represented by that snake, by that serpent. He's laying there trying to ambush you, and he's very, very dangerous. So now that we are in the end of days, in this last generation, we have to realize that what we're seeing now are reincarnations of those generations. As Zohar says, reincarnations of those souls of the generation of the flood. And that is why you have a lot of profanity, a lot of chutzpah, impudence, no morals, sheker. Everything is fake. Fake jewelry too. People are fake. Lying, much more than before. Modesty, people are dressing like animals, barely anything on. There's no busha, there's no shame anymore. These are all descriptions that the rabbis tell us is going to happen in the generation of Mashiach. You didn't have this 50 years ago when you were growing up as children? No, you didn't have that. Remember the respect you have for the teacher, for your parents. When the rabbis say that there will be chutzpah, this is what they had in mind. When kids talk back, when the student threatens to sue the teacher, as in this country at least. So what we're seeing is a complete degeneration and destruction of society in ways that we've never seen it. So why is this happening right now? Why should this happen before Mashiach? Just because we're having reincarnations of the past? Yes, it is definitely indicative of souls that are very impure coming back for whatever reason. Hashem is bringing them out right now to this generation. He's bringing them back. But there's something else. The rabbi called Maharal Miprag, who lived in the 16th century, writes that before you build a new building, you got to demolish the old one. Hashem is about to rebuild the world, to rebuild the temple, to complete the creation, to perfect it, to bring it to its highest state possible, to bring us that Ora Ganuz, all that light, all that dat, all that knowledge. This is going to be a beautiful world, a world without an evil inclination. So before he brings that, he destroys what was there before. So what you're seeing now is all of that bad or evil combination of people and character surfacing at the very, very end, which reminds us that this is the end. Hashem is going to clean up the world. He's going to remove all of that. So he's bringing all that to show us, look, you're going to be making a choice. Look at the extreme difference between evil and good. You will be able to detect or be able to notice that a lot more than before. You won't need special glasses. You're going to make a decision. You're going to make a choice. Which one do you want? To which camp do you want to belong? To the holy camp or to the impure camp? So obviously there's more than one reason why Hashem brings this at the very end of days. But this is a very challenging time to be living around. Imagine looking at this, facing this, and not being able to do anything about it. Well, thank God we have the Torah, and we have what the rabbis tell us, that these are the signs of Mashiach. At least it enables us to be focused, that this is the end of times, and that very soon Hashem will bring us the Mashiach. And when that happens, of course, the evil inclination will disappear, and there will be no more war. Everything will be in a perfect state, as it should have been. Just that up until then, it was man's job to bring it to a perfect state, but he didn't do a good job. He failed. The Jewish people's mission was to help bring it to a perfect state, and they didn't always succeed either. That's one of the ideas behind Mashiach. Mashiach leads the way in bringing about B'ezrat Hashem the perfection of this world.